Week 9 in the NFL kicks off tonight as the Houston Texans take on the New York Jets. It is now time for our full weekend preview of the National Football League. And now, because we're doing this on Thursdays, I get to talk about the Thursday Nighter. We haven't done much for Thursday night games so far this season, and so I am very excited about this. In part I am, in part I'm not, because Thursday Nighters can be a little bit unpredictable, and I do think a lot of it comes down to who has the coaching edge. And so in that sense, hello, Houston Texans, as they take on the Jets. The Texans are underdogs in this game by 2.5 on the road in New York. The obvious issue in this game for the Texans, and the probable reason why they are on the underdog portion of this. Everybody's hurt right now. Stephon Diggs out with an injury. He's done for the season. Nico Collins is still dealing with that injury problem, so he is done. And the passing game has certainly suffered. On the other hand, the Jets be the Jets. And so I am very surprised at how this line looks right now. I think that this is a real opportunity for the Houston Texans to go out and make some big gains. And I think the big way they do that is on the ground. The New York Jets have severely struggled when defending the run so far this season. We haven't done a lot of the fancy stat stuff in the last few weeks. So let me just see if the stats kind of back up what I feel like has been happening here with the run game, because it feels like for the last little while you have been able to really effectively run on this New York Jets defense. And so going to the site I use, by the way, RBSDM, I don't exactly know what that stands for, but the tagline on the thing is the football isn't played on spreadsheets. So defensive rush EPA. Of course, the site isn't going to work for me right now while I'm trying to do this on the fly. Here we go. Defensive rush EPA per play. The Jets are 22nd in the league. And so that is not good. And then defensive rush success rate, the Jets sit at 24th. So, as expected, you can run on the Jets. And I think the Houston Texans, what they want to do now, and what they've really wanted to do all season, just injuries have kind of limited them in what they're able to do, is they want to set everything up on the ground. D'Amico Ryan's defensive-minded head coach, for whatever reason, that's how defensive-minded head coaches like to handle this. So, that's why I think they are set up perfectly for this game here today. So yes, the receivers aren't there. This team doesn't want to beat you through the air. That's where they're going to make a lot of the big plays, but they want to really grind it out on the run. And that's why I think Joe Mixon has a very big game here. He's this way anyway in fantasy, but he is a must start in fantasy. And for our picks portion here today, we are going Houston Texans money line. Right now, the best one out there is plus 117, and we are going Joe Mixon over that rush total of 80.5 rushing yards. Those are a couple of plays that we are getting. And again, disclaimer, none of this is gambling advice. All of this is just things that I would do and a way to preview these games in a gambling-centric way. That has certainly become more popular over the last little while. I am not taking literally any credit for it. I will just say I've been doing stuff like this a little bit longer than the gambling wave was going on. But that's not in any way that is actionable to be like, oh, look how ahead of the curve I was. It's just the way I've been doing this for a while because it was an aspect of things that I enjoyed. Let's take it over to the fantasy football side of this one now. With the quarterbacks, I feel like this Houston Texans defense is a little bit difficult to predict in terms of how they play against quarterbacks, but really just defensively in general. They have given up some really big games so far this season, but they've also had a few games where they have just absolutely shut teams down. And then Aaron Rodgers, I don't know how much I want to be trusting Aaron Rodgers with anything on a football field right now. And so it's a bit of a difficult matchup to look at and be like, okay, yeah, no, this is a team that you can score on. But actually, like looking at it, Houston has given up, according to Yahoo, the 10th most fantasy points, or that they are the 10th easiest defense to go up against from a quarterback standpoint in the NFL this year. So I would still try to go against it. I would still try to find something else than Aaron Rodgers, but I guess it's not the worst play if you have him on your bench. For CJ Stroud, again, kind of hope that maybe you have a bit of a better option because I do think this is going to be a run-heavy attack. I still think you probably roll with Tank Dell, just given the wild volume opportunity that is going to be presented to him in this game against these Jets. And Joe Mixon to me is a must start. And then you're kind of starting your Jets, right? Like outside of Aaron Rodgers, Breece Hall is a go, and Wilson and Devontae Adams. Like you're not sitting those guys. So start your big guys in this game is basically what I am telling you here. The Denver Broncos taking on the Baltimore Ravens. The total for this one is between 46 and 48 and a half, with the Ravens favored by 8.5 points in this game. This does have the feel of a bit of a get-right spot for the Baltimore Ravens after a really head-scratching loss against the Cleveland Browns on week number 8. And with Denver, they are playing better football right now for certain. I think they have kind of figured out how to properly utilize Bo Nix. I think Nix has figured out how he can be properly utilized in the Sean Payton offense. And defensively, they're actually not too bad. And that is where Baltimore really suffers, is that they have had some significant struggles in defending the pass. So I actually think that this could be a pretty high scoring game. The total is at, like I said, right now between 46 and 48 and a half. That is just, it's a little too high for me to just jump on this one. And we do have player props here. So let's see, what are we looking at Bo Nix wise in terms of passing yards? The number right now is at 215 and a half. Could have something here. Game. Let's see what, because it feels like that's pretty low considering what Bo Nix has been able to do the last little bit. So let's just let's pop over to that game log here for Bo Nix. All of these things I should have had prepared by now, but it's fun to do this on the road or on the fly here, right? So passing yards the last little bit. Okay, so he's only gotten over that total. What do we say? 216. You can get it at 213. So that's the number we're going to use. 213. He has gone over that once, twice, 3, 4 times in what is this? 9 games, I think. So it is. It wouldn't be 9 games. This is week 9. But so 8 games. So about half the time he has been able to get over that. But the Baltimore Ravens pass defense gives up a bunch through the air. So we are going to go Denver plus the, we can get it at 9.5. So we're going to do that. Denver plus the 9.5. And we're going to go Knicks over 213.5 on yield passing yards mark. By the way, I didn't update this before, but last weekend in our weekend preview, overall went 11-13. We were significantly helped out by a 3-1 weekend in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, very much hindered by an 0-2 in the Canadian Football League, and then the NFL was what it was. But our player props have been doing okay on there, again, when we have decided that that's a way that we can go about it. From a fantasy standpoint, as I've stated, Bo Nix, I think, is a very viable option in this game. I think that there are going to be quite a few points put up here, and so I think Bo Nix has the opportunity to have some value. And then obviously, you're starting Lamar Jackson, you are starting Derrick Henry, and because I think this game could have a little bit of a higher scoring element to it, I do think Justice Hill could be a bit of a sneaky play in this particular contest. So I think that there is a little bit of value in the running back situation out in Baltimore. In Denver, I do think that the Ravens' run defense is okay. Let's see here from a statistical standpoint in the fantasy football world. Where do we see Baltimore here? Oh yeah, they are actually one of the more difficult teams to run against in the NFL. So this wouldn't be a spot I'd be rushing to put in a Jaleel McLaughlin or a Javonte Williams. This is kind of one to see when it gets a little bit haywire. How do we attack this? How does this team go about utilizing their running backs in this particular game? So this is more of a scouting venture for those ones. If you have to play them, you have to play them. Wide receivers, it does tend to be a little bit all over the place for those guys, but if you do have a Denver kind of secondary option on your team, whether it's a Reynolds or I guess Sutton wouldn't be a secondary option. But if you have one of those guys, I do think it's safe to kind of put them in your lineups here this week. For Baltimore, they went out and acquired Deontay Johnson. We have seen some guys kind of ease into those roles, so I can understand you wanting to take a week off with that. But I do think Zay Flowers is a pretty good option here in this game this week. And then you will notice when we do the fantasy breakdowns in these, tight ends don't come up. That's because basically whoever you have, you are starting. Like that, there's tight end has been so unpredictable this year. If you have a specific tight end question, let me know in the chat here for those of you who are watching live. But At this point, your guess is as good as mine when we get to that. It is the Raiders taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals favored by 6.5 points with a total between 45 and 46.5. The Bengals last week got just worked over by the Philadelphia Eagles. They get a nice safe landing spot with the Vegas Raiders, who aren't working anybody over. I think that this is probably a get right spot here for Cincinnati. I think that this is this is their season, right? Like if they lose this game, then you're into Jets territory where it's like, oh my God, where has this all gone wrong? So this is a must win for the Cincinnati Bengals. And so because of that, I do think that they are going to get the 6.5 points. And I do think that they are going to be a team that really puts a stomping on the Vegas Raiders here this weekend. From a fantasy outlook, I think when you look at the Bengals, like obviously Joe Burrow is a play. Zach Moss has been getting a little bit less and a little bit less and a little bit less in that backfield as the weeks have gone on. And Brown is getting a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. So we're trusting Brown in this game. I could see Moss getting a little bit. I think there's going to be garbage time in this game. And so I think Moss gets some opportunities there. And then you're playing the healthy pass catchers for the Cincinnati Bengals. We will see what's going on with T. Higgins. If he is a no, then Ioshavas becomes a bit of a threat there. And the Raiders have always been bad against tight ends. So the tight end, Gesicki's a tight end in Cincinnati, right? He gets the look there. For the Raiders, it is Myers, it is Bowers, and it's nobody else. I am not touching. I wouldn't force a Raider running back on my worst enemy in a fantasy football game. And then the other guys, like the Tuckers, the Turners, like we can be excited about their talent all we want, but they're just not being utilized in a predictable manner. So it is tough to assume that those guys are going to get anything of any kind of value. The Titans taking on the New England Patriots in the, oh my God, Scott Hansen, please don't put this game on Red Zone Bowl coming up on Sunday. The Titans are favored by 3 points. The total is at 37.5. Sweet goodness. This game is gonna suck. Yeah, I don't know. Both these teams are bad. And Tennessee has a roster that should not be in this position. We should not be, when you look at these two rosters side by side, and I'm not saying that the Titans are the '07 Patriots or anything like that, but they ain't the 2024 Patriots either. Like these are two teams that should not stack up against each other in this way. And so I have to think that wins out. This is the furthest thing from anything I'm going to click on, but we are going to go Tennessee -3 just for the prediction standpoint of this particular game. From a fantasy perspective, just don't. Start the running backs. Like no quarterback at any point in this game should be trusted. Start the running backs, Stevenson, Pollard. Wide receivers, I guess if you have to, you can go Ridley. He's getting a lot of looks anyway. And if any of those start to get completed, he's going to start to take off. But you're not trusting anyone on New England either. So this one can be a nice quick one for the analysis here. The New Orleans Saints taking on the Carolina Panthers. This one all comes down to the injury report, I would say. You have the Saints favored by 7 in this game. The total between 41 and 43.5, depending on where you are looking at this particular time. The Saints, as we've said, when they are banged up in the way that they have been the last little bit, they genuinely put out one of the worst starting rosters in football, especially in the offensive side. But now guys are getting a little bit healthier, and they are going up against, again, genuinely one of the worst offenses in the NFL, with Bryce Young getting out there against, for the Carolina Panthers here, against New Orleans. I think this is one where New Orleans kind of beats them up a little bit, and I do think that New Orleans gets the dub in this one at the -7, so we're going to go with that there. In terms of a fantasy perspective, Derek Carr, is Derek Carr going to be playing in this game? That is kind of something we should probably figure out. Hey, I thought he was on his way to coming back. He did say, I am no savior. He was limited in practice. This week he is set to return, as they are saying. So I do think that he could be a bit of a viable option if you are in a pinch from a, whether it be a bye week or an injury standpoint. I think there is a real value in bringing him in for this game. So I think that there could be a nice big performance coming here from Derek Carr. At the running back spot, when Kamara is healthy, you are playing him. Olave, when he is healthy, you are playing him. Taysom Hill, when he is healthy, you are playing him. For Carolina, Bryce Young, literally never. I think Chuba Hubbard has worked his way into every week starter consideration. And now with Deontay Johnson gone, I do think Xavier Legette does become a little bit of an interesting play, at least an interesting pickup. I do think that given the Bryce Young of it all, the fantasy value tends to go down a little bit for this kid, and also against New Orleans, whose defense I still respect, the value, goes down a little bit again for these guys. So it is it's going to be a bad football game, is what I'm telling you. This is going to be another one where it's like, hey, Scott Hansen, if we just don't, we'd be cool with that if that one just didn't show up on our red zone here. Let's see, how many games do we have for the early slate? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8. Oh, we got 8. So we can we just do, I don't know what the Septo box, I guess, would be 6. Can we just, like, New England, Tennessee, and New Orleans, Carolina, they can just kind of be on the thing over there. You know, like we can see on the ticker how it's going. We don't need to actually watch these teams play football, do we? Dallas taking on the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons favored by 2.5 points, and finally, a nice proper total this week at 51.5. Let's get some points going in this one, shall we? Atlanta at home. They are, quite simply put, a better football team than the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys defense getting a little bit healthier, not getting a whole lot better, though. So I think Atlanta has a field day passing on the Dallas Cowboys here. Looking at the player props, we hit on Kirk Cousins last week. That was a win for us. This week, where are we looking? Oh, no, I don't want pass attempts. I want passing yards, and it is at 246.5. They're intriguing us. They're intriguing us a little bit. Let's see the old Kirk Cousins game log now to see how this might go. Kirk Cousins game log. There we go. Stats per game. Thank you very much, Espen. So what did we say that was? It was 246.5. You can get 248 if you just get it down to minus 110. But minus 111 we can get a 245 at a minus 122. So maybe the juice ain't worth the squeeze on that one. But just from a number standpoint, 245, not a bad way to go. So how many times has he cleared that this year? That would be a 1, a 2. Only 2 times. That's interesting. These passing yard numbers are actually a little bit smaller than I was anticipating coming in here. He had the 241 against the Eagles, 238 against the Saints, the explosion against Tampa Bay where he goes for 509, but even just against Carolina, 225, against Seattle, 232, comes up with a good one against Tampa Bay at 276. So maybe, you know what? I'm glad we looked at this. Let's pump the brakes on a Kirk Cousins passing yards total here, and let's just go with the Falcons in this spot. We can get it under the key number of 3 right now, so we can go with a nice little ATL minus the 2.5, and we're going to feel very comfortable about taking that particular number there, if you know what I mean. From a fantasy standpoint, Kirk Cousins, we just went through it. Maybe the passing yards haven't really been there. I do think that points are going to be, and so I think you want as many pieces of this game as you can, because the Falcons defense hasn't been much in terms of great shakes either. So I think that this is a very, very valuable fantasy football game to be a part of. So both quarterbacks you're rolling with. I do think that when you're looking at the running backs, it's tough to trust anyone in that backfield right now with the Dallas Cowboys. For the Falcons, their run defense right now, actually, one of the more difficult ones to put up fantasy points against this season. So this one, probably stay away if you have one of the running backs in there. Again, you could hope that one of them trips and falls into the end zone, and that helps. So maybe go with that. But I would look for maybe better options. But the pass catchers, we're starting everybody, right? Like it is Mooney, it is London, Pitts, obviously, and for Dallas, like CeeDee Lamb, definitely. But I think this could even be a Tolbert game as well. So I think that there is some fantasy value there over on the Dallas Cowboys side. Miami Dolphins taking on the Buffalo Bills. Bills favored by 5.5 with a total between 48 and 51.5. This one, I am almost insulted from a Buffalo standpoint at how low this is, because you have Buffalo. Look, it's going to be November when this game is played. I don't think we're getting into super cold. At least it's not super cold here in Calgary, and now I'm just projecting. What are we looking weather-wise this weekend here? Huh? You can see where people's priorities are because you Google Buffalo weather, and Buffalo weather Sunday pops up. Like, yeah, people know. All right, we're looking at this in Celsius. So it's going to be 13 degrees Celsius. For those of you who are watching on the southern side of the border, going to be 56 degrees. So this isn't going to be that home field advantage that everyone talks about with Buffalo, and especially when Miami comes. they're actually getting at a pretty good time. But remember when these two teams played on Thursday? Tua doesn't. Bad joke, sorry. But this Buffalo team, for lack of a better phrasing, kicked the shit out of Miami. And so why are we assuming that's not going to happen here? I think that Buffalo really does put a hurting on Miami in this game. So I really do. I like Buffalo minus the 5.5 quite a bit in this game here. I think that is I think that's a good number. I think that's a good number that we are getting at there. And I don't think there's any player prop that exactly stands out for me on that one. But from a fantasy standpoint, you're starting Josh Allen. And honestly, I think it's another week of wait and see with Tua Tagovailoa. The running backs, Cook for sure. HN and like Mostert didn't get a ton of volume last week. It's a little bit concerning. So I would try to find a different option than Mostert for this game. But I do think that there could potentially be some points put up here for HN. And then like the wide receivers here, the Buffalo second option is going to be a funny thing to watch as this goes on, as Amari Cooper gets a little bit more of the offense figured out. Coleman had a big week last week. Shakir seemed to kind of be the straw that stirred the drink with this group, but I would still put a little bit more of my faith in Coleman than I would in Shakir right now, and I would trust him. And then the Miami ones, like, what are you not starting Hill or Waddle? Like, what are we doing here? I do quickly just want to see, what are we looking at Keon Coleman player prop wise? We don't have receiving yards on here. Man, that's annoying. But that's okay. We'll grind through. We'll be okay. Chargers taking on the Cleveland Browns. This is a really interesting game. Really interesting. Really is doing some heavy lifting in that. But this is an interesting game here where you have the Browns coming in as 1.5 point underdogs at home, taking on the LA Chargers, who just put a beat down on New Orleans last week. But again, how much can we take from what New Orleans did? Cleveland, Jameis Winston is there. The vibes are a little bit better. I'm kind of liking a Cleveland play in this spot. I think at home, it is a West Coast team traveling east. It is an 11 o'clock start. I think that the Browns get a little bit of a jump coming off of that win over the Baltimore Ravens last week. So I'm liking Cleveland in this spot. Maybe not enough to just throw down on the money line, but I'll take a Cleveland plus the 1.5. I think we can take a couple points in that and give us at least a little bit of a safety net on this. So you know what? I don't mind that play. Don't mind that play at all. I don't trust either of these defenses really to be able to go out and make a real stamp on what could be any kind of a prop play. But from a fantasy standpoint, I think you can. I think you can probably find better options than the quarterbacks here. At running back, Nick Chubb continues to work into this, and it's going to be interesting to see with Jerome Ford getting a little bit healthy, how they manage all the carries in that particular offense. On the Charger side, take advantage of J.K. Dobbins while you got him. For the wide receivers, a lot of excitement around Tillman after that performance. And so I think if you want to roll with him again, who am I to stop you? But that might honestly be the only wide receiver I would even look at in this game. This is not going to be, I think, a fantasy gold mine. Moving off to New York, as it is the Giants hosting the Washington Commanders in Gotham. The Commanders favored by 3.5 points on the road. The total is 44.5 to 46. Washington coming off of the gigantic Hail Mary from a week ago, while the Giants are bad. God, there is so here's my thought process. I still have some worries about the Washington offensive line. And I do think that the Giants defensively are still an underrated group a little bit because of the team that they play on, right? Like that they are getting beat up in some of these games, but it's because the defense is always on the field. But I still think that this is a good defense. The thing that is holding me up a little bit is that when these two teams played, it was 21-18, I think was the final score. Washington kicked the 6 or 7 or 8 field goals in that game. And that's the thing that worries me, is that they gave up scoring drives on every single possession they played against Washington. And so that worries me. I do still think, though, that this defense and this pass rush is going to be enough to be able to kind of slow down Jaden Daniels here. And so we're going to go underdog here. We are going to go Giants plus the 4 in this one. Certainly not one we're clicking on, but Giants plus the 4. I just think this pass rush is going to be enough to maybe give Jaden Daniels just a little bit more of a hesitation as this rolls on. Do we really not have? There's player props right there. Let's see, Jaden Daniels. Yeah, they got all the stuff for the quarterbacks. Look at some running back guys in here, hey? Passing yards, total 228.5. That's a good number. We're not going to... I was kind of hoping it would be maybe a little bit exaggerated. Maybe we could take advantage of that. Pass plus run, even that at 278. It's not high. I was hoping that would be in the 300s, honestly. So I don't think we can take advantage of that. So we'll just say Giants, and we'll move on to the fantasy breakdown of it. Haven't missed one yet. I don't think, anyway. Giants, you're not playing Daniel Jones, ever. Shouldn't be on your roster, ever. Washington, Dan Quinn is coaching the hell out of this defense this year, and so I think he should really be commended for the job that he is doing there. Jaden Daniels, I just said, I think the Giants pass rush gives him some problems. I am never going to tell anyone to sit Jaden Daniels, because, what if, right? The running backs here, I think Tracy... a little bit banged up this week, but I do think he's going to be good to go, I think. So that would be, I still think you have to roll with him. I think the Giants have found something in this particular running back. And for Washington, you have to see the health of everyone. But whoever their starting running back is the one you are playing. McLaurin... Again, I think you kind of have to in case this offense does kind of erupt. Game flow wise and all of that, again, the way I'm predicting this game to go, I think you might be able to have a bit of a better option than McLaurin, but I'm not going to tell you to sit someone in an offense that's been this good. And for the Giants pass catchers, it's Neighbors and no one else. Jacksonville taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. This one, the first game in the 2 o'clock window. We have 4 games in that window. Couple interesting ones, I guess. The Eagles favored by 7.5 points at the total at 45.5. I get that we are riding this Eagles thing right now, and also the Jags have a couple of guys who are a little bit banged up right now, and so it is tough to trust. I am not there. If I'm wrong on this one, and these are 2 teams that I have said I'm not touching that, but just for the purposes of this, I hereby declare that if I am wrong on this Eagles game, this will be 3 in a row, and I will officially be bought in. And I get it's only Jacksonville, but I will be bought in, and I will stop doubting that this Eagles team. But I just can't erase what I have seen from these guys in the first part of the season to assume that they can blow out Jacksonville. Now, Jacksonville ain't good, but I think that they'll be able to at least keep this game between the white lines, and so I think that they'll be able to cover this one. So 3 straight underdog plays after a bunch of favorites early on. But no, I like the Eagles here I like the Jags here plus the 7.5. From a fantasy standpoint, probably not a Lawrence day. I think with how Hurts is playing, you kind of got to. Saquon, you are literally never sitting him. ETN is out, or I think ETN is still out, so Bigsby becomes the play in that game. And then the receivers, you got to see the health. We thought Thomas was going to be out a few weeks, and now, he's limited in practice. We've had a few of these this year. It's been really frustrating to kind of track that. And so it is tough for me to give any legitimate Jacksonville info here now that we're doing this on a Thursday. So if Thomas somehow finds his way onto the field, I think you kind of got to start him, but I would be making other plans. And then for the Eagles, it's Brown and Smith. How are you sitting those guys? I think you roll with them. Chicago taking on Arizona. The Cardinals are favored in this game by a point. The total is between 42.5 and 44.5. Arizona coming off of a surprise win over Miami last week, while Chicago, that was a heartbreaker there against the Washington Commanders. But I think right now, Chicago, there's just something about them that I'm not really thinking they should be the underdogs here in this spot. So I am going to go. I keep thinking back to, I get that it was Kingsbury who had it in for Arizona, but I just keep thinking back, Jaden Daniels picked this defense apart, and I think Caleb Williams could kind of do the same. So I think Chicago has a good game here. I'm going to go Chicago, and we're just going to roll money line on this bad boy. We're going to go Chicago plus 105 to just win this game straight up. Let's take a look at least at what we could have going here for a player prop on Caleb Williams in the passing yardage. 218 we can get. All right, now we got to look. Caleb Williams, 218. How many times have we eclipsed that mark here this year? Because it's an interesting number given how little respect I have for the Arizona pass defense, to be completely frank with you here. So we have here game log. We're looking at 218. That was the number that we found. 218. It's not even. It's only at minus 111. That ain't bad either. So 218, he has 1, 2, 3 of those. So, and that's against Jacksonville, Carolina, and Indy. Now, I would put Arizona in those buckets, right? So I think Caleb Williams actually can have a day here. You know what? We're writing it down. We're doing it. Caleb Williams, we're going to say plus, plus 218, or over, 218 and a half on the passing yards mark. So we're putting a couple predictions down for this one. NFC West gets the showcase on Sunday afternoon with the Rams taking on the Seahawks. Seattle is actually a road underdog in this spot. They are plus 1.5 right now with a total right around 48. I know that everyone is healthy on the Rams side, and I know it looked bad for Seattle last week against Buffalo, but this is fully letting preseason takes get in. But I feel like everyone is so ready to just jump off of Seattle at any moment that the second it looks bad, because when it looks bad, it looks really bad for this team. The second it looks bad, though, everyone is just gone from them. And the second anything goes right with the Rams, all right, back in, baby. Matty Stafford, Sean McVay, we're rocking, we're rolling, we got this. And I'm not there. I'm not there with this group. I think Seattle wins this game, that they have a phenomenal home field advantage. This is a huge game in the NFC West, and I think they're a better football team. So I'm going to go with the Seahawks here. We're going to take Seattle, and we're going to do it at plus 106. And then NFC North. This is going to be the marquee game of the late afternoon slate. It is the Green Bay Packers taking on the Detroit Lions. The Lions favored by 2.5. The total between 47 and 48.5. Jordan Love, it's weird. I have him in fantasy, and so there hasn't been like the ruled out thing or anything like that. But like Jordan Love was on the field practicing here this week. I kind of would be surprised if he played. And if he does play, I don't think he is going to be good. I have real concerns about what Jordan Love is going to look like here this week. So I think Detroit does win this game. I think this is being just a little bit too favorable right now to the Green Bay Packers. I think when you see what Detroit was able to do last week, even without Jamison Williams, I think you have to roll with that one. And I jinxed it. I knew it. I knew I was going to miss these. We've missed the last couple fantasy breakdowns here. So, Chicago against Arizona. From a fantasy football standpoint, you have Caleb Williams, who I just said we're going over on his pass total. I think you can start him this week. I'd have a tough time sitting Kyler any week. James Conner, we are rolling with. And DeAndre Swift, I think you kind of got to trust him at this point. And I think this is going to be a game where you can trust the pass catchers for Chicago. And for Arizona, right now it's kind of just Marvin Harrison, and that's it, given how that offense is going. Rams against Seattle, you're starting your studs. I think you can even go Stafford in this game against the Seahawks. I think you can go Geno against the Rams as well. And but both the main running backs are a go. Probably not on Charbonnet this week, but yeah, Kupp is playing, Nakua, and whoever is healthy on the Seattle side, they're the ones that you are rolling with. Now, fantasy for Detroit against Green Bay. You have the first of all, that minus 2.5 is one we're going to click on here. That Green Bay defense that has just been, again, one that I had in my mind was going to be good this year, and that has been something that has been difficult for me to get away from. But actually, from a fantasy standpoint, that they are in the top 10 in terms of tough defenses to play. So I still think this is going to be a Goff game. Like I said before, I am not trusting Jordan Love this week. I would go against that one personally. From a running back standpoint, like Gibbs and Montgomery, whoever's healthy, you are rolling with that. And same thing, Jacobs and them. For the pass catchers, like Amon-Ra is an automatic whatever, and Laporta is as well. And I don't know if I go with the secondary options out in Detroit. And for Green Bay, you're kind of just rolling the dice and hoping you hit on something with these guys. I like Reed is an every week play. I think Watson kind of ebbs and flows as Jordan Love goes. So I think honestly this week, the only one that you are trusting is Reed in that receiving room. And then waiting all day for Sunday night for the Vikings to take on the Indianapolis Colts. The Vikings favored by 5.5 points. points. The total between 46 and 48.5 right now. Joe Flacco is going to be starting in this game for the Colts, which makes you feel better about things on the Colts sideline. But I think like this is a massive game for Minnesota. Things are starting to wobble a little bit. Can Minnesota get this thing back on track and prove they are kind of the legitimate team that we thought them to be? And for the Colts, it's getting late early out there for Indianapolis. Looking at the standings right now, I don't know why the standings button went away when I tried to click on it, ESPN.com. But looking at the standings here for the Colts, they come into this one at 4-4, so it's actually not bad. And playoff-wise, they sit half a game back of a playoff spot. So every game for them is going to be very big with Joe Flacco in there at quarterback. I go Minnesota still in this spot, minus the 5.5. I think that defense is just going to be a little bit better, and I don't think that Brian Flores is going to be too mystified by anything that Joe Flacco has going on right now. So I do like Minnesota in this spot, and I do like them minus the 5.5. And from a fantasy standpoint for the Colts, like you're not. I don't know if you're starting any quarterback in this one. Sam Darnold has been putting up some fantasy numbers. Indianapolis, 12th most fantasy points against on average this season against quarterbacks. So you probably can roll with Sam Darnold and feel okay about it, actually. I think you can probably do that. At running back, Aaron Jones is great. If Jonathan Taylor is healthy, you're rolling with that. If not, you're probably not rolling with anybody. And Downs has really worked his way into being a wide receiver you can trust every week. And I think with Flacco back, Pittman becomes an option that you can roll out there for the Indianapolis Colts. And for the Vikings, like, yeah, Addison, Jefferson, you guys know the drill on that. And we skip ahead to Monday night, where it will be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs favored by 8.5 in this spot. Tampa Bay's pass defense concerns me greatly, but every time we think, all right, this is going to be the week that Kansas City goes out there and just lays an ass beating on this team, and here they go, it never happens. So I think Kansas City wins this game, but I don't think it's in a blowout again. I think Tampa Bay covers at +9. That is the way that I'm going to see this one kind of playing out right now. This is just, it is such a tough defense to go up against for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so I have some concerns about how they're going to be able to work a shorthanded offense and try to pick up any kind of yardage here. But I do think they're going to be able to kind of keep this one close. But from a fantasy standpoint now, that's kind of where I was going at. I had pivoted in my mind already. But from a fantasy standpoint, I'm not rolling with Baker this week. The Rashad White, if I am desperate, and I don't think I'm going any of the pass catchers out in Tampa Bay. And for the Chiefs, Mahomes, I do think, like, if you're not going to start him against Tampa Bay, then why is he on your roster? And then, like, Kareem Hunt, again, if you have him on your roster, you are playing him. At wide receiver, I think this is a week that you can roll with Worthy and feel fairly comfortable with that particular move as well. And I think this could be a good Travis Kelce week as well. So I think this is, again, I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but I think you have to trust your Kansas City Chiefs going up here against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So those are our picks for week 9 in the NFL.